The film opens as a search party is looking for a couple, Carrie and Simon, in a forest. Two of the search dogs go into an underground cave and start to drink the water from a fountain. After they resurface, the owner sees the dogs stare at each other without moving. At night, in their cages, one of the dogs starts to make an unnerving crackling sound. At the house, the owner hears the sound and goes out. He goes to check on them and finds that they have been grotesquely fused together. In another city nearby, a couple, Tim Brassington and Millie Wilson, are having a party with friends before they are set to move away from the city. Millie is a teacher, while Tim is a musician who has fallen back on his aspirations. Millie talks with her friend Kath, who advises her to break up with Tim and find someone who will make her happy, but Millie says that Tim is all she needs. Tim talks to his bandmates, Jordy and Luke, the latter of whom is Millie's brother. They try to encourage Tim to stick with them and make music. They invite him to play a guitar at their tour, and Tim accepts. In the middle of the party, Millie makes a proposal to him with an invisible ring. Tim takes too long to respond, and it becomes too awkward for both of them. At night, Millie is annoyed at Tim, even though he is very apologetic. Before falling asleep, Tim thinks he overhears Millie muttering to herself about how he couldn't live without her. Tim tries to call her name, and then looks across from the bed and sees a creepy smiling woman next to a dead man. And as he pulls the covers over himself, the creepy woman crawls toward him. Tim then wakes up from the nightmare. Despite the uncomfortable situation, Tim and Millie vow to stick it out and proceed with their move. When they enter the new house, Tim notices a foul smell. He looks at the ceiling and finds what appears to be a single dead rat, but it squeaks alive and startles him into dropping it. It's shown that the rat is fused with other rats by their tails. Millie starts working at her new school. She befriends another teacher, Jamie McCabe, who also happens to live in the same area as her and Tim. She explains her current situation with Tim, acknowledging that they do not know what to call each other at this point. Jamie offers to show Millie around the area. That night, Millie tries to convince Tim to go to bed with her, but Tim rejects, saying he needs to finish his song preparation for the tour. He then asks her to go hiking the next day, and Millie accepts. The next day, the couple set out for the forest. After they walk a couple of miles, they reach the end of the road. Tim then sees multiple small bells inside the bushes with a strange symbol written on them. Despite Millie not wanting to go there, Tim convinces her to come with him. The two end up lost in the rain. Tim tries to check his compass, but they both have no idea how to use it. Suddenly, Tim falls into the ground. Millie tries to help him out, but they both end up falling into the underground cave. Both Tim and Millie start to feel a strange feeling like the place is crowded despite it being empty. Millie tries to get out, but Tim convinces her to wait out the rain. The two create a fire and set up a shelter. Millie gets thirsty, and Tim sees that they don't have much water left. He gives her all he has, and he goes to drink the water in the cave. He takes a sip and takes some more with his bottle. When Millie asks Tim how he was able to smell the rats, he explains that when he was a kid, his father made him clean his room over and over again because he detected a foul odor. But no matter how much Tim cleans his room, his father keeps insisting that he still smells it. Tim didn't smell anything until one day his dad tore his room up to find a dead rat that had been nesting above the warm light that Tim could not identify. Later on, Tim's father died, but his mother just sat in bed with him for days after suffering a psychotic break, smiling through tears while her husband rotted next to her. This has left Tim with issues into his adulthood. In the morning, Tim and Millie wake up to find their legs stuck together, seemingly from some kind of substance. When they pull themselves apart, it proves painful and tears some skin. They are then able to climb out of the cave and get back home. Later at home, Millie asks Tim to give her a massage. Tim starts to give her a massage, but he slowly starts to grab her back and shoulder hard as he feels an unusual connection to Millie despite their recent lack of intimacy. Millie stops him, and he wakes back up to himself. She suggests that he get some rest as she goes out into town to buy some groceries. Tim goes to take a shower while Millie drives away to town. He seems to lose consciousness, and his body moves according to wherever Millie moves, causing him to injure himself. Tim later goes to the hospital, where the doctor asks him a series of questions about his mother. Tim assures him that he is not having a mental breakdown, and the doctor prescribes him diazepam, which is a muscle relaxant that slows the central system down. Even if the brain starts panicking, the body relaxes. The doctor then tells him that a couple went missing a few months ago in the exact place Tim and Millie are now staying. Tim then goes home and does research on the missing couple the doctor told him about. It turns out that they were the same couple we saw being searched in the opening of the movie. Later, Jamie visits, and Millie invites him inside. They have dinner together, where Tim and Millie recount the time they were lost in the forest. Tim asks Jamie if any cults used to live in the forest since they found the cave, as well as the bells with the symbols. But Jamie says that there used to be a chapel, but it had long been collapsed and the members thinned out over time. What seems to be a friendly conversation between Tim and Millie at first turns to moving words when Tim says that he is there against his will and is trapped with her. After Jamie leaves, Tim suspects that he is interested in Millie, but she tells him that he is just being friendly. Tim then passionately kisses Millie, but their lips appear stuck together before they painfully pull apart. Millie gets mad at him and goes to bed. Later, while they sleep, Millie gets awakened by Tim sleeping on her hair. She turns around, and Tim is swallowing her hair. He wakes up and starts to choke, but they forcefully pull it out. The next day, Millie drops Tim off at the train station for his tour. She tells him not to worry about getting back early and tells him to have fun since she doesn't want him to feel trapped with her. Tim says he didn't mean it, but Millie says a space will be good for them. But after she left, Tim starts to get sick. He tries to take his diazepam, but it doesn't help. Millie is at school as she finishes her class. She sees one of her students still sitting there. Millie goes to ask her what is going on, and she sees that the little girl has drawn the two dogs from the opening of the movie. Tim's urge gets unbearable, and he abandons his belongings at the station and starts to walk all the way to Millie's school. Millie is talking with Kath, who still advises her to find someone else and leave Tim, since he doesn't love her enough and is not romantic. But Millie tells her that he is romantic enough and remembers their first date, where he gave her a Spice Girls vinyl since they were her favorite band. Millie then sees Tim outside and quickly hides him in the little boy's restroom. Tim then suddenly initiates sex, and Millie gives in. They have a passionate encounter, but when Tim tries to remove himself, his privates is stuck inside Millie's privates. They try to pull themselves apart, but it is too painful for both of them. They continue to try to separate in agony, but a student appears to spot them. Having no choice, Millie pushes off Tim and separates forcefully, but they both bear the pain. Jamie then comes in as Tim hides. Millie gets out and tries to pass it off, but Jamie tells her to use the staff's restroom next time. He tells her that she is bleeding from her privates, and as he walks out, he sees Tim's foot. Later, Tim and Millie get back to their home. Millie is very embarrassed by the situation, since she could have been fired or even arrested for going into a little boy's restroom. Tim tries to tell her that he is not feeling okay, but Millie makes a rude comment about his parents by saying how she has become like being his mother, living with something that's dead. She then goes to Jamie's house to apologize for what took place, but Jamie tells her not to worry about it since it is female issues. He invites her in, and she sees a picture of Jamie and his boyfriend. Jamie then gives her a glass of water, and Millie talks about her difficult relationship with Tim. Jamie advises her to hang on if they truly love each other. Millie asks if he leaves alone, and Jamie says that there were two of them. He says that they were the same age as Millie and Tim when they first bought the house and used to have fights like them. He tells her that there were times when he walked away, but realized that he cannot live separated from his lover. And Millie sees him wearing 2 rings on his finger. Jamie then tries to open his wedding video for her, but Millie has to leave when she sees a dazed Tim standing outside. Later that night, Millie appears to be sleeping, so Tim goes downstairs to work. He opens the missing couple's last picture and goes through the EXIF data. He finds the coordinates of where their picture was taken, and it is in the same forest where Tim and Millie went hiking. Tim also sees the bells in the couple's picture, which are the same ones he saw in the forest earlier. Then suddenly, Millie bangs on his door. She starts floating and moving as much as Tim is moving until he opens the door, and she falls on him. Tim tries to wake her up, but Millie just keeps pushing into him. Having no choice, Tim slaps her and wakes her up. Millie tries to cover what happened to her as a Caesar, but Tim explains to her that it is the cave they went into that is making them act out like this. He also tells her about the missing couple and tries to prove his theory by getting their hands closer, but Millie doesn't believe him and walks off. Before she leaves, something makes her stop. Tim tells her he can feel it too, as something inside them has been imprinted on each other. Millie says that her parents are coming over the weekend and tells Tim to move out, as she doesn't want him. Later, Tim sleeps in a separate room from Millie. Soon, Tim wakes up to find himself being pulled by a force to Millie's room. He grabs onto something and manages to stop, but Millie's room opens by itself. The force then starts to pull Millie toward Tim as it bends and contorts her. The two try to fight it, but the force makes them hold hands. Their hands then slowly begin to fuse together. Tim gets an idea and tells Millie to get the diazepam drug from the drawer beside her. Millie manages to get the drug, and the couple starts to take all the pills before they start to snort them to get it to work quicker. The medicine manages to stop their hand from fusing further. The couple uses this chance and tries to separate themselves away, but before they do so, Tim passes out. In the morning, Tim wakes up and finds that his and Millie's arms are still fused together. Millie has planned to separate their hands using a buzzsaw, but Tim disagrees. She tells him that as soon as the diazepam in their blood runs out, the fusion will continue. Tim finally agrees, and she gives him whiskey before she uses the buzzsaw to cut the skin between their arms. After separating and calming down, Millie decides to drive them to the hospital, despite Tim wanting to go back to the cave for some answers. Millie then realizes that she left her keys at Jamie's house. Tim stays behind to avoid any further problems, but he ends up going back to the cave. Inside the cave, he discovers other people who are fused to the wall, as well as a painting of two people getting fused together. Suddenly, something grabs his leg. He uses his flashlight to find Carrie and Simon, who have fused into a freakish monstrosity. They start to approach him, asking for help, but Tim grabs a knife and slashes their fingers off to get away from them. Millie goes to Jamie's house, but doesn't find him. She hears a TV from the other room and goes to investigate. She sees a wedding video being played of two men, one of whom looks sort of like Jamie. The men are seen undergoing a ritual where they cut their arms as some sort of initiation to fuse together. Jamie then appears and reveals himself as being a fusion of both men, being part of the cult that he mentioned, as they literally bring people together to become whole, and he hopes for Tim and Millie to do the same thing. He tells her that if they don't accept it, they will end up like Carrie and Simon. Jamie slashes Millie's wrist, but she strikes him back in the face and runs out, causing his face to split into separate people. Millie runs back to the house, where Tim has resurfaced. Suddenly, the force starts to pull them together, but they both grab onto something. Tim then lets go and starts to walk toward Millie. It is revealed that he has the knife tucked behind. He tells Millie that there is only one way to stop it, and he reaches for the knife. But he instead mimics Millie's earlier proposal, as he acknowledges how much he really loves her and that he was bad at showing her love. Millie tells him she loves him too. Tim then grabs the knife and gets prepared to slit his throat so that they do not have to go through with this. Before he kills himself, he sees Millie's blood traveling to him. Millie shows her wrist wound and accepts her death in Tim's arms. A frantic Tim brings Millie back into the house. She wakes up and finds that he willingly fused his arm with hers to stop the bleeding. Accepting that this is going to happen either way, Millie and Tim reaffirm their love for one another and dance naked to Say You'll Be There by the Spice Girls and begin passionately kissing as their bodies come together, turning them into one being. At the weekends, Millie's parents arrive at the house for Sunday dinner. They ring the doorbell, and it is the same bell used by the cult members. When the door opens, they are greeted by a kind of normal-looking androgynous person who resembles both Tim and Millie.